This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg here in South Africa. My name is Eben Jansen. The show, of course, live broadcast from our studios in Auckland Park. We're also streaming live on YouTube right now with the whole show available on demand on our YouTube channel. Today, we look at parliamentary behaviour after last week's fracas in the National Assembly. Then there's a peep at the state of local government in the Limpopo province. There's also an update from the Farnham Commission a little bit later, and we close by looking at African innovation. First, Katrine Milan gives us a news update.
Well, hello and welcome to Newsroom. I'm Katrine Milan, and let's take a look at the top stories this morning. Analysts expect the economy to narrowly escape a recession when growth figures are announced today, but they say the numbers will be uninspiring. In the first quarter, the economy contracted by 0.6%. It would take another negative figure in the second quarter for a recession, but the analysts say we could see fractional growth. Former Mineral Resources and current Minister of Women in the Presidency, Susan Shabangu, will testify before the Farnham Commission of Inquiry today. Shabangu was the Minister of Mineral Resources when police opened fire and killed 36 miners involved in an unprotected strike. Platinum producer Lonmin has categorically denied that it's planning to cut up to a fifth of its workforce. Reuters is reporting that sources say up to 5,500 workers stand to lose their jobs as the company tries to restore profits after the strike earlier this year. Lonmin says no retrenchments are planned at this stage. Tensions between the ANC and the Public Protector have reached boiling point. The party says claims by Thuli Madonsela that her confidential letter to President Jacob Zuma was leaked by a senior party leader are preposterous. The ANC has called on Madonsela to reveal her source. The United Nations has cautioned against flight restrictions into and out of Ebola-affected countries in West Africa, saying such limitations are preventing the transport of critically needed health workers and supplies, as well as contributing to economic and diplomatic isolation of the region. The most recent figures by the World Health Organization show a total of 1,427 deaths so far reported in Guinea, Liberia, Sierra Leone and Nigeria.
The current limitation on flights into and out of these countries and the restrictions placed on aircraft originating from these countries, transiting through airports in neighboring countries, though understandable, are not warranted.
Then finally, in Hollywood, Breaking Bad scored big at the last night's 66 Primetime Emmy Awards, winning a total of 5 awards, including its second consecutive prize for Outstanding Drama Series. Modern Family won the Best Comedy Series for the 5th consecutive time, while Big Bang Theory actor Jim Parsons was also a repeat winner, walking away with his 4th lead acting Emmy.
I want to thank somebody that I've never thanked before, largely because he passed away shortly before this craziness started, even though I think he was able to see it in his own way. But it's my father, Mickey Parsons. He encouraged me to be an actor. He never discouraged me to be an actor. And in a career that hinges so much on confidence a lot of the time, that was a really great gift. So thank him. And thank all of you. I mean that. Thank you. Good night.
More on that story on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Eben, over to you.
Hello again. The African National Congress has moved swiftly to establish a 10-member committee to probe and take possible action against parliamentarians involved in the disruptive behaviour last Thursday. The committee consists of 7 members from the ANC, 1 from the Economic Freedom Fighters and 2 from the Democratic Alliance. EFF members of Parliament were ordered from the House and refused to obey the Speaker's instructions. The House was caught up in chaotic scenes and proceedings were suspended. More questions than answers has been raised about the damage that the incident has done to South Africa's democracy. Before we start the discussion, let's take a look back at what transpired.
When are you paying the money? Because the public protector has instructed you that you must pay the money.
Point of order, Chair.
And we want the date of
Speaker,
when are you paying the money.
Point of order.
These things of point of order are the ones that you are hiding behind. Ne? You are very good at that because every time reports are brought here, it's point of order, point of order.
The honourable
We are here to
member,
ask questions and we need answers.
I now give the President the opportunity to respond to the supplementary question of Honourable Malema.
The issue, for an example, that honourable member is referring to is a matter that arises in the recommendations of the public protector. And I am saying people who did the upgrades at Nkandla,
Order. No.
they are the
Honourable
ones
members, please
who
allow the President to
always
finish.
determine who pays when to pay. It is the government that decides. And the matter is referred to people who are legally authorized to make that determination.
Honorable Speaker.
Honourable Shibambu, take your seat.
There's a question
Honourable
about payment of the money.
Shibambu,
When
take
is the
your
president
seat.
paying the
I
money?
have not recognized you.
And he has not answered the question of
Honourable
when he's paying the money. That is what we're
Shibambu, I
looking
will
for here.
throw you out of the house. I will throw you out of the house if you don't listen.
Speaker, on a
Sergeant
point of
at
order.
Arms, please assist me with relieving the members who are in this house who are not serious about this sitting to
Who are
take
serious,
their
Chair,
leave.
who are raising a point of order. You're not
I
fair.
am
We
not
want
allowing
point of order.
I am not allowing
There's
you.
no member that money is the public.
Honourable members,
We want the money
leave
from
the
God.
house.
No, all we are
Speaker,
asking is
leave the
paying
house.
back the money. Why are we getting thrown out?
That money, Nkandla money must be paid.
Political analysts are divided. Some call it chaos and anarchy, others accountability. What is true is that the behaviour was definitely unparliamentary. Now, in the Johannesburg studio, we're joined by political analyst Ralph Matekha, and in Cape Town, from the Institute of Security Studies, is Judith February. Very good morning to both of you. Ralph, if I can start with you here in Johannesburg, the EFF has recently received a lot of criticism for their behaviour, especially from the ANC, but the party remains defiant that no amount of intimidation will deter them from carrying on what they call their parliamentary work. But surely this is not how Parliament works.
Well, certainly, this is an unprecedented incident in South Africa's parliament, but I think that the scene for this kind of an incident has been set towards the end of the fourth term of parliament. It was very clear that the fifth term of parliament, the current term of parliament, was going to be very confrontational, and I think that EFF also came into parliament with their own clear mandate, as they understand it, that they have to be seen representing the interest of their people or their constituents. And I think that the conversation really got out of hand. The Speaker of Parliament, clearly she couldn't contain that discussion, or she could not preside over that kind of a discussion. I don't think it's a question of choosing whether it's anarchy or it's democracy at play. I think it is an inevitable development in South Africa's democracy, because we should understand very well that in the previous year, most parties were still gathering their space within Parliament. And now you see this party coming in, this development going further. It shows that they are frustrated, of course, with being overruled, being the minority, no doubt. But I also think they are also trying to find their space in Parliament. And I think it will settle down over a period of time.
If I can go to Cape Town, Judith, if you're still with us, just give us your views on, firstly, what Ralph said, but also on the incidents of last week.
Clearly, what we're seeing here, I think, is the EFF demanding that the President, in fact, be held to account. Now, if one's read the 20-page response which the President filed and submitted to Parliament last week or whenever it was, if one really looks at it, it really is a grand lesson in obfuscation. And there's no way that one can say that that really constituted a full response from the President. So one can understand the economic freedom fighters' frustration with the lack of response from the President. Having said that, of course, we have to abide by the rules. But, Eben, I think it's very important that we don't put form over substance. And I think that towards the end, where we saw the Speaker not allowing Floyd Shivambu to speak and so on, and allowing it to descend into such chaos, was really a moment where I thought that the president was being offered far too much cover. For the riot police to come in was a completely over-exaggerated response to, in effect, the riot police do not have any jurisdiction over what happens within the precincts of Parliament, where we have to remember the Constitution says that there is absolute freedom of expression. And so it really is for the Speaker, I think, to have dealt with this in a way which showed more wisdom. And also one wonders about the neutrality of Baleka Mbete as Speaker. She occupies a very senior position in the ruling party as chairperson of the ANC and as Speaker. And it seems to me that her neutrality is seriously to be called into question quite seriously after what happened last week.
But Judith, surely this is not an event in isolation. We've seen a whole build-up in the recent past, the storming of the Gauteng legislature and so forth. So surely she herself must have some sort of context in what could follow in this case.
Yes, and it will be interesting, Eben, to see what happens next, because, of course, there is going to be some sort of ruling to deal with the economic freedom fighters. But the question is whether the president will be called back to Parliament. The Speaker has intimated that that will be the case, because he needs to respond fully. It's interesting because in your clip, the president said that he has he's dealing with the matter by those who are legally obliged to determine the costs of non-security related costs in relation to Nkandla. Now, that in itself is a sleight of hand, because as we saw the public protector this weekend assert her constitutional authority and say that in fact she had made recommendations and those are the only ones in law that one has to abide by. But on the question of Parliament, I think it will be interesting. Will the Speaker go for suspending the members of the EFF? I think that's going to be a difficult political path for her to tread, because the EFF will no doubt go to court to argue the issues around freedom of expression. I know that Cyril Ramaphosa, as the leader of government business, is going to be meeting with the EFFs and other opposition parties. And one hopes that in that way we can get some sort of some clarity, and also that there'll be some way forward. Because obviously we cannot have Parliament descend into chaos and the rules not abided by every time there are disagreements. The National Assembly is supposed to be a public forum for the airing of issues, and that has to happen in a way which is respectful and in a way which clearly follows certain rules, as long as those rules are not used for narrow political interests.
Therefore, Ralph, in that sort of context, chanting down people in the National Assembly and the kind of behaviour that we're seeing in the House, it has no place there, and it's totally, totally unacceptable.
Certainly, it has no place there, but we also need to put it in context as well. If you look across the world globally, you look at other parliaments, you look at the parliament in Japan, you look at the parliament in Kenya, you look at parliament in Britain, for example, where in Westminster, where members will even jump on the tables. I'm not saying what we have seen is something to condone, but I don't think we need to over-sanitize our parliament and the processes in parliament. If members cannot express their views in parliament, where else will they be able to do that? But a quick one on the questions about what happens and how the questions was handled and how the presiding officer intervened on that. For me, the way I see this, the questions had to be allowed about the substance of the question as to when will the money be paid. But that does not mean that the president's response has to be accurate. There just has to be a response.
Surely next time there'll be different questions, Ralph, that will be asked. Every time questions are asked, we cannot say, oh, this is more important than other questions being asked, and then you jump over and talk and scream over people. We can't have that.
In the spirit of Parliament, it's not about providing an exact answer, but it's about the nation also seeing members trying to answer or even failing to try to answer.
On camera now, we have pictures running from the Gauteng legislature. This is what happened. This is the precursor to what's happened in Parliament, and we've seen this kind of behaviour. This is pretty much running into the legislature and looting the legislature, taking the food, eating it, and in the words of Julius Malema, in this case, making it ungovernable because we do not agree with the principles in Parliament. We cannot have that in a democracy. Let's go to Judith to answer that, Ralph, and then we come back to you. Judith?
Thanks, Eben. Well, obviously, I'm just looking at that clip. Clearly unacceptable behaviour. I think we do need to draw a line in the sand around the kind of behaviour that we want in the legislature. Having said that, one also has to look at the president and members of the executive and the long line that this has followed of a lack of accountability and a way of answering questions which is more about skirting the issues rather than substantive accountability. And I think that has been the case since Thabo Mbeki's responses on HIV/AIDS, recent issues where Parliament has been reactive on the Gupta-Gate matter. It was never even raised in Parliament in a substantive way. And certainly the issue of Nkandla, which I think that the ANC and the President are underestimating in terms of people's frustrations around not getting answers. But of course, the rule of law has to remain. We are all bound by the Constitution. So is the EFF. And it is up to the Speaker to impose those rules in a way which is not partisan, but in a way which allows for the follow-up question. I think a lot of this could have been diffused if she had allowed the follow-up question and allowed the President then to respond to that in a way which was substantive. She also has a duty to try to extract from the President a substantive answer. And certainly what we heard in the House was not substantive, and some might say that behaviour in and of itself is undermining Parliament and our Chapter 9 institutions.
But surely, Judith, it is not the Speaker of the House responsibility to foresee the behaviour or bad behaviour of people in Parliament, and as you then say, having to diffuse scenarios in Parliament. There's a way to behave in Parliament, isn't there? And how do we then, in that spirit, how do we classify going forward what robust debate is or unparliamentary behaviour and the role that the Speaker then has to play?
I think, Eben, I disagree with that. I think the Speaker, she would have had plenty of warning. She knew this question was on the papers. We've seen what's happened in the Gauteng legislature. We've seen what's happened in the National Assembly before. So I think she would have had plenty of she's not politically naive. So I think she ought to have understood that this was going to be a situation which could descend into some level of chaos. So it is precisely her job to preside over the House, to enforce its rules, and also to do so in a way which is non-partisan. And I think that is the query also that the EFFs are raising about her neutrality in this situation. I think there are ways of dealing with it. And, if you don't show your party slip too much, I think there are ways of dealing with it better than she did last week.
Ralph?
Well, every time things fall apart in Parliament, and I don't want to compare with what happened in Gauteng legislature, that is completely unacceptable. There is no way of justifying what happened in Gauteng legislature, even if trying to put it with, trying to understand that in the context of what recently happened, I think it would be unjust. These are two different...
But this type of behaviour, there's a pattern developing that this type of behaviour is escalating. The only difference between Gauteng legislature and the National Assembly is the numbers. There are only so many members within the National Assembly. If there were more, it would have descended into total anarchy.
What I think should be condemned about Gauteng, what happened in Gauteng, the looting and destruction of property thereof, completely unacceptable. But back to what has happened in the national legislature, I think that the time at which the Speaker escalates this also has a contributing factor. And of course, as you say, the context has been said by Gauteng. You have a very clear environment of suspicion when EFF is involved. And EFF, they've got themselves to blame for this because they are the one who decided to go this route. But I also think that we need to also understand the role of the Speaker in this. If the Speaker hastily escalates an issue to become, or maybe throws quite a large number of people out of Parliament, that raises a concern about the Speaker's ability to actually preside and get peace within, make peace within Parliament. You do not assess the role of the Speaker in terms of how many people they can be thrown out. You have to try to create that harmony. It is the role of the Speaker to try to understand the minority party, opposition parties, and also understand how they will relate to the majority party in this context. I think maybe had the Speaker ruled differently, I don't know, and I'm not aware. I do not have information about what EFF had actually planned. I think maybe had they been allowed to proceed with the question, and the Speaker should have said that the President has answered, it's not adequate for you, but the President has responded. The answer does not have to be to that level of accuracy. Maybe the event will have turned up differently. I don't know.
Let's go to Judith quickly. Judith, final remarks. How do we go forward from here?
Well, I think, Eben, we need to reaffirm the rule of law. That is clear. I think, as I said, there will be a meeting between Cyril Ramaphosa, the leader of government business, and other opposition parties. I think some agreement needs to be reached about the way in which we go about doing things in future. Clearly, it's not helpful for Parliament to descend into chaos. Having said that, I think if the live news feed from Parliament was cut, as rumour has it, that was an act, in my view, of censorship. And I think we really need to be looking and investigating that to see if that was the case. I think we also need to reaffirm the principle of freedom of expression, and we also need to reaffirm the ability of Parliament to hold the executive to account, and particularly the President on Nkandla. And hopefully what's happened last week has put the President on notice that he cannot continue to obfuscate in this matter, that the public want answers and we want real answers. And that's what the EFF is saying, and that's what many opposition parties are saying. And I think the focus will then turn to the ad hoc committee, the Public Protector's letter of the weekend, to see how we can in fact strengthen the Constitution and strengthen the rule of law in terms of the way in which Parliament, through its ad hoc committees and its processes, holds the executive to account, and the President in particular in this case.
Thank you very much for joining us live from Cape Town. That is Judith February, who is with the Institute for Security Studies. Ralph, final remarks with you. The way forward, but also how do you rein this kind of behaviour in Parliament once it gets out of control?
Well, I think that, as Judith said, there need to be respect for rules. There are rules that are there, and I don't think rules have to be changed immediately just because EFF has come into Parliament. They have to also understand that they need to play by the rules and also observe what the Speaker is saying. Equally so, it is very much important that the Speaker also doesn't use the position of a Speaker to try to block certain types of questions. They need to be asked and they need to be responses. Responses need not necessarily be accurate, but at least they need to be seen being responses.
There needs to be responses, but there can't be responses if you're being shouted at and being talked down, and if people, in this case, in some cases,
no doubt,
storm.
No doubt, that's unacceptable. And I think in the greater scheme of things, there is a deep sense of mistrust among political parties, or let me say between the governing party and opposition parties. There need to be a way to bridge that gap, because if you go into committees, you'll find much better cooperation among parties than you find when cameras are focusing on them in the national gallery. They need to get a better sense, to recapture that sense of trust.
And not play to the camera.
Certainly.
Because anarchy cannot rule in our Parliament. Thank you very much for joining us on this vibrant discussion on this issue. Let's now take a look to, what you're talking about on social media. Of course, very much still in on all the social media. Julius Malema and Steve Hofmeyer have the same mindset, just on different sides. That says Odwa Ndwaba. Mr. Lyon says, I never see someone like Julius Malema. I never see someone like Jesus. He makes politics interesting. Yes, but there are still rules that we have to apply. Whenever he talks, everybody gets shaken, says Mr. Lyon. Studuzo says the message of the EFF is simply the message of the public protector, who legally mandated that Jay must pay back the money. Unfortunately, there is a way that we deal with this. Gavin Candia says, I'm surprised that Julius Malema hasn't yet put out a statement blaming the recent earth tremors on monopoly white capital. That one from Gavin Candia. Keep it coming. We love your contributions, of course, at SABC Newsroom. That's where we are on Twitter now. Let's take a quick look at the front pages from around the globe today. There you'll be able to see that the International New York Times has a picture from the funeral of Michael Brown, who was recently killed by police in violent demonstrations in Ferguson. Then the Miami Herald is also looking at that story. And there you can see a picture of an emotional attendee of the funeral. And further north then, in Canada, papers are pouring cold water on the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. saying US diplomats have been banned from taking part in the new internet craze. And we say rightly so. How does it make the world better? That is the question that I have to ask for everybody who's doing the Ice Bucket Challenge. How is it making the world a better place? Or is it simply entertainment for all of us online? I disagree with it. Now, last night, Billy Crystal paid a beautiful tribute to the late, great Robin Williams at the 66th Primetime Emmy Awards. If you didn't see it, here's a bit of what Williams' longtime friend had to say.
He could be funny anywhere. We were such close friends. He would come to all of our great family functions, weddings, bar mitzvahs, that kind of thing. And he would sit with my older immigrant relatives, like he was one of the guys. And he would tell them about his journey from his little shtetl in Poland to America. One uncle of mine said, I came to America after World War II and I hitchhiked. And Robin said, I waited till there was a 747 and a kosher meal. Well, as genius as he was on stage, he was the greatest friend you could ever imagine. Supportive, protective, loving. It's very hard to talk about him in the past because he was so present in all of our lives. For almost 40 years, he was the brightest star in the comedy galaxy. But while some of the brightest of our celestial bodies are actually extinct now, their energy long since cooled, but miraculously, because they float in the heavens so far away from us now, their beautiful light will continue to shine on us forever. And the glow will be so bright, it'll warm your heart, it'll make your eyes glisten, and you'll think to yourselves, Robin Williams, what a concept.
An American-based foundation has donated 15 million rand for the construction of a clinic at Umlazi.
This facility that is going to be built here with a 15 million rand contribution from AHF is, among other things, going to actually help us to expand.
Itembaletu Clinic is the only clinic that caters solely for HIV patients. It accommodates 16,000 people.
Your World, weekdays between 11 and 12 midnight.
Welcome back. You're still at Newsroom here on SABC News. Former Mineral Resources and current Minister of Women in the Presidency, Susan Shabangu, will testify before the Farlam Commission of Inquiry today. Shabangu was the Minister of Mineral Resources when police opened fire, killing 36 miners involved in an unprotected strike. Former Minister of Police Nathi Ntetwa and Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa have already appeared before the Commission. The Commission is investigating the deaths of 44 people during strike-related violence at Lonmin's platinum mining operations at Marikana in August of 2012. Now, Nozintombi Mia joins us live from Centurion to give us the latest. Very good morning, Nozintombi.
A very good morning to you, Eben.
Nozintombi, what's the expectation from the then Minister of Mining, Susan Shabangu, when she makes her appearance this morning?
Well, the big expectation from then Minister Susan Shabangu is for her to explain about her communications that she had on the 15th of August 2012 with then Lonmin member Cyril Ramaphosa and also the Minister of Policing. In her written statement, she has testified so far by saying that she received a phone call from Cyril Ramaphosa on the 15th, saying that this was not a labor unrest issue and that it was a criminal issue and there were criminal elements, and he wanted her to classify it as that so that they could bring in the police to try and quell this criminal element. She then explains about how she was supposed to go to a cabinet briefing but then decided to have a meeting with Cyril Ramaphosa, who subsequently happened to be in Cape Town, so that they could discuss the way forward. She planned on having a conversation with the president and the Minister of Policing at that time, but she says that before she could have an opportunity to speak to either the president or the Minister of Policing, the events on the 16th happened and 34 minors were subsequently shot by the police. So her testimony really is going to be one of those testimonies that is extremely critical in trying to determine the timeline of who exactly gave the order to the police to use live ammunition against the miners that were striking on the Kopi.
To be a very significant day then, and when the minister takes to this stage. But tell us, this commission, is it racing against time now to complete the work?
It certainly is a race against time. You'll remember yesterday's judgment from Judge Ian Farlam. To explain it simply, there were two phases that were supposed to happen in this commission. The first phase was supposed to be the testimony, the evidence, and all the role players are supposed to get the opportunity to say their side of the story. And that was considered phase one. Phase two was supposed to be the elements that looked at the socio-economic issues that were surrounding the Marikana areas. So the issues of poverty, the issues of a breakdown in family structures because the man lived in the hostels and was not in a family unit. So those are the two phases that were supposed to be looked at, but yesterday's ruling now rendered phase two moot. So phase one and phase two will now be collapsed into one phase, and they'll be looking at all those factors as one issue. So this was done because the commission ends on the 30th of September, and they have less than 4 weeks to complete their work. In fact, it's even less than 4 weeks. It's about 2 weeks that they've got left, because they're going to break around the 16th of September to give the judges an opportunity to review some of the information and evidence that they've received. And the last 2 weeks of September is most likely to be when all the legal representatives will get the opportunity to have their final arguments before they then break for recess. So it certainly is a race against time. And this ruling that was pronounced yesterday is helping to speed along processes.
And Tommy, thank you very much for that contribution. Of course, she'll keep us updated as to what happens at the Farlam Commission right throughout the month of September. It seems we're a little bit behind schedule at this Commission of Inquiry, but Nozintombi will keep us updated as to what's happening there. Let's take a look at what you're talking about on social media. Josep Marti Benau says, Robin Williams, what a concept. Wonderful tribute, Emmy Awards. Yes, Billy Crystal, very close friend. And what a concept, what a wonderful human being. We need more Robin Williamses in this world. SF Chronicle says, Breaking Bad scores again at the Emmy Awards. That was last night, of course, if you're into that sort of thing. Bal says, best Emmy Awards ever. Good job, Seth Myers. Thank you, Billy Crystal. Well said about Robin Williams. R.I.P. Robin Williams. Yes, everybody understands the greatness of the man. What's happening on our Facebook page? There, of course, you can get all the latest. Today, you'll see that a Liberian doctor who treated victims of the Ebola epidemic and then contracted the disease himself has passed away. You'll also see there that the Gauteng Human Settlements Department says it is working with law enforcement agencies to take action against those who are responsible for injuring 10 people in a confrontation between residents and sheriffs at flats in Joubert Park here in Johannesburg. This following a string of evictions that happened yesterday. And, of course, another story we've got, platinum producer Lonman has categorically denied that he's planning to cut up to a fifth of its workforce. Now, all of those stories and more you can find on our Newsroom Facebook page. Now, before we carry on, the football season is well underway, and Liverpool fans in mourning today. And here in South Africa, well, they always at their passionate best this early in the campaign. Argentinian superstar Angel Di Maria is set to join Manchester United for a club record of nearly $100 million later today. And Liverpool, well, you've signed Mario Balotelli, didn't you?
A very warm welcome to you at home. This is Afro Showbiz News, the show that brings you all things art and entertainment from around the African continent. Tunisian rapper Ben Ahmed, better known as Clay BBJ, has been released after spending 2 weeks in prison. The arrest came after he was accused of insulting security and violating public morals. The songs sung by the artists criticized the current situation in Tunisia. That's Afro Showbiz. Catch us every Saturday evening at 7:30.
Well, hello and welcome back. This is Newsroom on SABC News. Let's take a look at the top stories this morning. Former Mineral Resources and current Minister of Women in the Presidency, Susan Shabangu, will testify before the Farlam Commission of Inquiry today. Shabangu was the Minister of Mineral Resources when police opened fire and killed 36 miners involved in an unprotected strike. Analysts expect the economy to narrowly escape a recession when growth figures are announced today, but they say the numbers will be uninspiring. In the first quarter, the economy contracted by 0.6%. It would take another negative figure in the second quarter for a recession, but the analysts say we could see fractional growth. And platinum producer Lonmin has categorically denied that it's planning to cut up to a fifth of its workforce. Reuters is reporting that sources say up to 5,500 workers stand to lose their jobs as the company tries to restore profits after the strike earlier this year. Lonmin says no retrenchments are planned at this stage. Now, all these top stories and more are available on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Eben, over to you.
Yeah, thanks again, Katrin. Mayors, executive mayors and municipal managers from 30 municipalities in Limpopo converged under one roof in Bela Bela to discuss challenges, opportunities and the overall state of local government in the province. The Lekgotla was held under the theme, Local Government Deepening Democracy Beyond 20 Years of Freedom. Issues discussed include local governance and service delivery, municipal finance and the local economy. Earlier this year, Auditor General Kimi Makwetu revealed that less than 10% of the country's 340 municipalities and their entities obtained clean audits in the 2012-2013 financial year. Now, Chairman of the South African Local Government Association in Limpopo, David Machabe, joins us from our studio in Polokwane this morning. Good morning, David. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity this morning.
How did the 30 municipalities in the Limpopo province perform in the Auditor General's report compared to the previous year?
Well, we, as a province, we have welcomed the audit outcomes as produced by the Auditor General of South Africa. But of course, we have welcomed them, but we have also raised concerns on our performance as a province. But then we then have to come with ways of improving the audit opinions in the province.
What interventions are SAGA going to put in place to help these municipalities and others?
Well, as the South African Local Government Association in the province, but as part of the countrywide approach, we have adopted the municipal audit support program that focusing on identifying weak municipalities, but also supported them in terms of ensuring that they improve their audit opinions, but also coming up with what we called accountability and consequences framework.
Are you going to read the riot act to those that are still not complying and lagging behind?
Well, that's why we are saying we're now as SALGA introducing what we call the accountability and consequences framework, where those that have made decisions wrongly have to take the responsibility of the decisions that they've made, which was not in favor of what our people are required on the ground.
What about things like service delivery protests? We've seen them resurface in Malamulele. What are we going to see you guys doing to address this problem in this particular area of people demanding their own municipality and then other service delivery protests?
Well, one of the commitments that we have made as SALGA in the province, we have committed to work with the Department of Coxstar in the province, but also work with the Premier in terms of resolving the service delivery challenge that confront of many of our municipalities, including Malamulele itself, We have also agreed that we need to, in terms of what the minister agreed, in terms of professionalizing local government in the whole country.
Now, lack of capacity and skilled manpower has been cited as one of the key causes of problems facing municipalities. How are we going to see you address this specifically going forward?
Well, our focus is on leadership. We want the municipal leadership from the municipal manager level as well as the political leadership to take responsibility. But secondly, we want to ensure that all municipalities in the province implement the Gazette, which was released by the minister in January. That focuses on Section 57 as well as Section 66 managers, focusing specifically on capacity building around them, but also professionalizing by ensuring that we employ people with skills required.
And you're happy with the outcomes from the Lekgotla that's just passed? You see the solutions coming out there?
Well, as you have already said, we convened under the theme local government deepening democracy beyond the 20 years of freedom. I'm sure as the South African local government in the province, we are very much happy in terms of the outcome of the resolution. What is left then is then how do we implement them and make them effective so that our people in the province are able to receive the service delivery as required.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today, sir. That's the chairman of the South African Local Government Association in Limpopo, Mr. David Magabo, who joined us live from our studios in Polokwane. Of course, mayors, executive mayors, and municipal managers from 30 municipalities in Limpopo converged under one roof to discuss the challenges, opportunities, and an overall state of the province there. And you just heard the outcomes there. Now, today we close with Newsroom. Now, Newsroom is an online digital media platform that focuses on the innovative news we often overlook on the African continent. Every month, we take a look at some of the innovative, inspiring stories from Africa that often get overlooked. Now, joining us, as always, one of the founders of Newsroom, Kato Machar. Good morning, Kato. Thanks again for joining us. As always, you bring us good news about the continent. Tell us about the Falling Walls Lab, this international forum, and how it's making an impact.
Yes, I think the Falling Walls Lab is our recent partner that was established based on the falling walls of Berlin so many years ago. We've just brought them on board as part of our partners to come and take their program, which they are running, which has got an impact on the ideas that people have across the entire continent. So we've brought them on board to say, let us give this platform to African innovators so that they can be able to be exposed and also get them to go and compete in Berlin with the best or best of the best.
Now we've got Mark Saunders from Falling Walls Lab on the line. Yes. Just, Mark, if you're with us, can you hear us? Mark Saunders, are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm with you. Fantastic. Thanks for joining us. Just tell us about this opportunity and what it means to you guys at Falling Walls.
Great. As Kati mentioned, the Falling Walls Lab was inspired by the fall of the Berlin Wall that happened 25 years ago. And the Falling Walls Lab is an event that creates a platform for young entrepreneurs, scientists, researchers, innovators, and artists to present their breakthrough ideas in 3 minutes. And they'll be presenting to a high-profile panel of jury members, and as well as a lot of interested audience. And in 3 minutes, they will have to convince the jury of their idea.
Kato, you're going to ask Moscow?
Yes, Mark. What would be the impact there for these scientists that you guys have identified, and what kind of projects are we receiving, and the type of applications that we're getting from South Africa and Africa as a continent?
Well, what we have seen is that South Africans are very, very innovative. And as soon as we put the call for applications out there, there was just a pouring in of applications that we received. And these applications ranged from pharmaceuticals to engineering to energy solutions to new business models to innovative ideas to improve government service levels, and I could go on. most of the applications that we received are from university students, as well as from graduate students all around the country.
Mark Saunders, thank you very much for joining us live from Amsterdam there, telling us about how we're going to interact with their platform, the Falling Walls Lab, and how it's going to help innovation on the continent. Now, before I let you go, Katu, let's just talk about what's been happening in recent weeks. An innovation of a chairless chair made for factory workers here on the continent. Tell us about that. That sounds interesting.
You see the way you're seated now?
Yeah?
You could be sitting on something that feels like a chair, but it's not a chair.
It's not a chair.
So you could just be squatting, and yet you're not necessarily sitting and resting on something. So this is a contraption that you actually just can put on yourself, that you can actually walk and run with, and that can just go and, with a push of a button, can lock at any position that you can find.
A chairless chair, so you can strap it on.
Yeah.
It'd be great for I would think it would be great for in factories specifically. Yeah. And we sit so badly anyhow. I mean, my chiropractor says 80% of the planet is sitting badly.
Yes, I mean, this is very practical. And if you look at it, why we've been struggling with our backs and all that. And and this, as practical as it is, it has actually brought about a new way of thinking, and it actually brought about a much more better improved in productivity within the factory workers. Mm-hmm. And currently it's being piloted by BMW and a few other car manufacturers to find whether they can use it in their factory line and also within the cars. So you can imagine where the seats are going in the future.
That's fantastic, man. Yeah. Another innovation that gives parents access to their kids' academic performances. Where can I sign up for that one?
Well, Limu, at the Innovation Hub, it's part of the Mzansi innovators that we are profiling constantly. This young man, Ola, from Boksburg, has actually came up with a software that young people can be able to access their worksheets, their timetables, comments, their marks, and everything else from within the school. So you as a parent, myself as a young parent, we can actually now have an active participation on what's going on with our kids in schools. So you can imagine that if we think, me and you sitting here and we're thinking Rendani is actually at school and yet she's not at school, she's going to be in so much trouble soon.
You know, we have so many issues in education here in South Africa. I think that's fantastic. And me as a parent, that's the one thing you want to keep a handle on is to see, it's not only, parents are always accused here in South Africa of not being involved enough in the education process.
And this is the platform to be able to get parents to be more vocal. And actually, your online live communication with the teachers constantly. So we should look out for it at the Innovation Hub and further more information on innovation.
Brilliant. Thanks, Katu, for joining us this morning. We've run out of time this morning, unfortunately, but we've got a little bit of time left to just take a look at your final thoughts on social media before we go. Who are the owners of Lonmin, asks Conga. Well, it's listed. You should be able to find it. Larati says the numbers of people getting retrenched is so scary. MTN, of course, announced retrenchments, or not announced, is expected to announce retrenchments. Meanwhile, Reuters reports that Lonmin aims to cut around 5,700 jobs, about 21% of its South African workforce. They, of course, deny that at the moment. Profit for Lonmin execs and UK shareholders for South Africa. I can't. Sorry, Eli, can't make up what you say there, mate. Maybe you should try and write us in English next time, and we'll try and understand what you say. That's where we wrap it. Newsroom broadcast live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. The show repeats at 2 in the afternoon with a rebroadcast at 5 a.m. the following morning. We're also streaming live on YouTube, of course, with the whole show available on demand on our YouTube channel. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We're Katu. We love it in the morning.